Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're all well. So I'd quite like, if I may, to make a couple of points before we start the meeting proper, as it was. And the first thing, the most important thing, or very important thing, is to congratulate Teresa and all of the staff on the Ofsted report. You must all be feeling very pleased with yourself. You should be feeling very pleased with yourselves. That was a terrific result. So from all of the elected members, well done, and thank you all for your efforts. They're very, very much appreciated. And secondly, I'd like to thank Teresa for the message you sent out earlier today, Teresa. I think that was timely and apposite. And if you'll allow, I'd like to make a couple of comments. Although we're not a safeguarding isn't our remit, it does concern all of us. And I can't add to the sense of horror and grief that Teresa expressed on the death of Arthur. It's quite appalling. However, Teresa alluded to comments made on various radio and TV programs and newspaper articles, comments referring to the naivety of social workers. And I've never encountered a social worker who was unaffected, innocent, or uncaring. Yes, these tragic cases have occurred before, and they will occur again. We can't ever underestimate the wickedness of some people who exist in this world. And whilst every single child who suffers at the hands of someone who should be caring, loving, and nurturing, they should be mourned. They are thankfully few and far between, and that's in no small way due to the dedication of just those social workers who are currently being criticised. Our children's services staff have worked under the most difficult of circumstances over the past 2 years. I'd like to thank them, and I trust that my thanks are echoed not only by this board, but by all our elected members. Thank you very much. This is a dreadful occurrence, but it's not a crisis. Mostly we pick up these dreadful cases and we intervene in time. We're just always appalled when we find one that we've missed, and one is one too many, I know, but we don't miss them very often, thankfully. And that's all I wanted to say. So forgive me for that. Welcome again, and we'll go straight on to apologies. I've noted, Councillor Jones, that you'll be leaving at 6:30. I've got a message from Councillor Holloway to say that he will be joining us as soon as possible, but he will be a little late. And do we have any other apologies?
Councillor Wheeler, we just have apologies from Stuart Dipple from police.
Okay. Somebody waiting to come in now, which I'm sure Catherine will deal with. Do we have any declarations of interest? Can't see any hands up there, so I'm going to assume we don't.
Yes, Chair. Yes, we do.
Right.
Sorry, apologies. I wasn't quick enough typing RTS.
Sorry, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was getting in there quickly. Yes, Chair. I have dispensation from the monitoring officer and from the Chief Executive, but my partner works for Dorset Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust, and I will be speaking about some of the figures later. Hopefully I don't get her fired.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? No, Can't see anything there. Right. If as we go on, you suddenly think that you should have declared something, just shout out, and that will be absolutely fine. Thank you. Can we quickly do a review of the previous meetings minutes? I know we can't approve them now, but if we've reviewed them, we can approve them when we finally all meet up again. Does anybody have any comments about those? I'd just like to ask where we are. We mentioned vaccination of our children in care at the last meeting. Are we up to date with all of that? Or have all our looked after children had the vaccinations that they're due? Do we know?
Would you like me to answer that?
Please.
So I had a progress report this afternoon from Jenna, who says that it's been a difficult process because of the amount of children to go through the school age immunisation service, and there's been quite a few cancellations, but it's all in progress. It's all happening, and as far as I'm picking up, then it's all on track, and our immunisations for this month are 89.5% from Dorset Healthcare.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed for that. Thank you. Going on to item 4, Teresa, if you'd like to introduce and do a bit of scene setting.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your vote of thanks to the staff for delivering a good Ofsted outcome. We are pleased with that, clearly, but you're absolutely right. We always maintain the reality that there's always more to do, and the tragic death of Arthur and the prosecutions that have led now to that being discussed in the public arena, I think has seen what can only be described as something of an outpouring of public grief, which I completely understand and have absolute every sympathy for. Sadly, public grief can sometimes turn into that grief cycle of the next part of that is anger and blame, and we can know that that can cause some huge challenges for our staff. But we also know, exactly as you said, that the vast majority of the families in our country and in our world, I'm sure, want only better for their children than they had for themselves. They're not always delivering it every day. Maybe none of us ever did when we were parenting. But what we know is that the vast majority of our families just want to be able to give good enough and better care for their children. Our challenge is to be able to identify quickly, at pace and thoroughly, those who have other means and methods to actually be able to want to hurt children. That remains a constant conversation for us as a child protection agency. And you're right, this isn't a child protection board, but of course, our determination as this board is to see children brought up within their families where it is safe to do so. And we are very clear that we do that by thinking family and seeing and hearing child. But we know that it's absolutely crucial that us as a partnership keep that focus. We know the life outcomes for our children are better when they can be safely cared for in their families and communities. And so that's why we're focused on it, not for any other reason. But these are dark days for all of us in this world of children's services. And I'm grateful to this board and others who continue to lean into this space, continue to work in a space that is a very difficult space to work in, and a place where it would be very understandable for people to want to walk away from. And I want to encourage people not to do that. We'll never rest until we get to the place where it is ever and always better. And that's very much our determination. We know that in Dorset, we have a strong partnership. We've met today and we've talked today about other things that we need to do. I've been very impressed, but also reminded of the extent of our requirement to give leadership as a local authority by the number of communications I've had from partners today saying that they would really appreciate the opportunity to reflect upon recent events, to take some time with us thinking together about how they can make sure they're in the right place. So many of our partners don't have the structures of supervision and management oversight that we have as a local authority. So many of them, so many of our teachers, so many of our police officers, so many of our health practitioners often feel that they're working in isolation within their own organisations. And we intend to reach in even further and deeper to make sure that that whole system stays stood up. I made no secret during this pandemic that my concern around schools closing, whilst absolutely understanding, I understand it professionally and personally, the concerns about safety for children and teachers in that space. We know that schools are part of our safeguarding system. Our health colleagues are part of our safeguarding system. We are nothing if we're not together, if we're not all stood up together. So I will, I'm afraid, restate that message around needing to really think about how we do that. And it's that same partnership that wraps around our children in care. So thank you, Louise Smith, for your really straightforward and up-to-date and factually accurate message about vaccinations for our children, because we know, and you'll see that in the data set today, we have much richer information about how well our children in care are doing. We know from our data and from Ofsted that our children are much more settled, their stability is improved, their access to health outcomes, their access to having their emotional well-being needs assessed and therefore being able to be responded to, those SDQs, which we'll talk about, strengths, difficulties questionnaires, being completed in a much more rigorous way. But we will not rest until we have every single one of our children on the path for permanency, that they're achieving quickly with great educational outcomes. You're going to hear tonight about the virtual school. I'm so proud of the work that Lisa and her team are delivering into that virtual school space. We've heard some incredible accounts in our performance boards recently about the way in which they're engaging with young people to support them getting back into education. And Ofsted, you'll hear, acknowledged that they were quite struck by, it's interesting what we just do by nature, and they were kind of a little bit amazed by the focus and attention that social workers give to children's pets when they're coming into care, and the focus and attention that the virtual school give to children's extracurricular activity as well as their academic achievements. And it's great to be able to explore some of that tonight. Same with the Care Leaver Covenant. We know we're supporting a lovely number of young people into higher and further education and training and development. We want to do more of that. We want to have all of our family happy, not all the time, it's not good for anybody, happy most of the time, healthy for sure, and having the opportunities around education and training. But they are difficult days these days. We're going to be in a time where we will need to reflect a lot upon the profession that we are all part of. And as we do that, I'm confident that what we've got within Dorset as a partnership and within Dorset Council are some practitioners who are quite extraordinary and are doing great work with our children and young people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I really take that on board. That's very useful. Councillor Biggs.
Yes, just like to follow up from that letter, Teresa, which I think was really good and I'm sure will be well received. But it did put into mind what happened previously on the Baby P incident on Dorset County Council, and the numbers that looked after children rocketed. You know, and we were told that was the reason, because more were being reported, and it literally went up 50, 60, I think, something like that, almost overnight. Yeah. I'm just wondering if you know, if you're worried that that's going to happen again.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Biggs. And I'm worried, I'd be worried if I thought we had that number of children whose needs were presently not being identified. And I don't think we have that number. But what I do worry about is exactly as you described. The death of Peter Connolly was such a shocking and again, a shockwave through our community, that people's ability to remember that where we have the biggest impact is working with our families and supporting them. It's always rocked. So the job of us as a partnership is to forevermore and to continue to hold the line very carefully about working with those families, identifying those families where the stresses are stresses that we can work with and de-escalate. I was just sharing with the leadership team today that I remember a day in my own time as a duty social worker having 2 visits to undertake during that day, 2 investigations to undertake, both of which were fractured skulls in babies. The physical impact on each baby was the same. The way in which those fractured skulls had taken place was so different as to make the difference to how we worked with those families. One, they're both caused by the hands of the parent. but one as a clear result of, it will stay with me forever, and it's long enough ago that I think it's okay for me to share, somebody in deep stress, having come upstairs, seen something happening with other children, throwing the baby down on the bed in fury, not okay, baby bounces, breaks, fractured skull. The other, I'm afraid, a much more, I won't give the detail of, but a much more concerning way in which the second skull, the way in which we work with those families, that is the nature of our work. It has to be different. It has to be nuanced. We have to firstly protect those children. But I can assure you that one of those babies did not go home, was not reunified with that family, and one in time did. Because actually the stresses in that family were de-escalated to a suitable level that actually we were able to work with and make sure that such a unfortunate accident, but clearly a high risk and you could say neglectful activity, didn't mean that family couldn't be together. We don't work in the area of low-level matters. All of the reality is we have about 280 children at the moment who are on child protection plans. That means within our county we have at least 280 children who are experiencing significant harm who we're working with. That is the job, but the reality of doing that job means that sometimes it's difficult for us to, we don't talk about our families' lives. It would be inappropriate for us to do so. What we need to be able to differentiate are those families who we can support, de-escalate stress, raise up strength and support those children staying at home. So long answer, my apologies, Councillor Bigg. It is what obsesses us. It is why we've started conversations already today. But we know we have the capacity within our partnership to be able to differentiate those matters. And therefore, I trust and hope we will not see the level in Dorset of massive increase. But I already know from talking to colleagues around the country that I am seeing it in other places.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, Stella Jones.
I'm sure there's going to be a backlash against social workers in the media, and our social workers are going to feel very pressurised. Do we have a backup system for them so they can obviously, but you got one where they normally can talk to you about it? Will there be anything special for them? Because I'm sure there's going to be in the media, there's going to be this awful backlash.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jones. We've been meeting today to think about putting in even more touchdown spaces, more opportunities to just talk together about the impact of the work. The impact of the work in a pandemic has been extraordinary. We know that many of our workers have continued to face real challenges, working face to face, working in sometimes quite hostile environments. You all know, and I think sometimes maybe the general public aren't so aware, that we work almost entirely with consent of families. We can sometimes dispense with that consent, as I said earlier in my letter, but when we do, we still want to get back to the point of being able to work in partnership with them, because that's where we have impact. Nobody's really ever said at the point in which we never built a relationship and we just did stuff to them that had impact and positive effect for them. It doesn't. We need our social workers to lean in, build trusting relationships with that inquisitive curiosity, journeying alongside them. We, to do that, you're absolutely right, must keep that support going with them. So I'm incredibly grateful for this panel's acknowledgement of the incredible work they do, because that is part of that support. They feel your support, they know that they have your support, and that's really important. We will do everything we can to keep touching down with staff. We've been doing that now in very difficult circumstances for over 18 months. This is another additional very difficult circumstance for us to keep that happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, you wanted to come in?
That's okay, Councillor Wheeler. I think Teresa did finish off with in terms of our staff being able to communicate with us and basing that on relationships. So I don't have anything further to add.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, Teresa. Are you? No, none of us are happy with having to discuss this, because we would wish not to be in this situation. But are those reassurance? Does what Teresa said reassure you, Councillor Jones?
Yes, yeah, I'm sure. I know Teresa looks after everybody anyway, but this it's good to hear there would be extra care for them.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, item number 5, corporate parenting data set. Matthew, this is you.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I wanted to start today with just saying that we, at the end of October, we had 441 children that had come into our care, and we had 277 young people that had left our care but were in our care leaver service. In terms of the numbers that we've got, we've seen a consistent of around 65 per 10,000 in the local authority, and we've worked really, really hard to know our children, to get those permanence plans in place for them. We've seen the statistics around it getting up to 98%. We're looking at the quality of the work that we're doing, and month on month, we're seeing an improving picture around our children achieving permanence. We're not where we want to be, but we continue to work towards high aspirations for our children achieving permanence. In the report, it referenced 35% of our children had achieved permanence, which when we think back to April 21, we were sitting at around 27%. So we have had significant improvement. Into November, we're looking at about 36.6%. I appreciate that wasn't in the report, but we continue to work really, really hard for us to get our children achieving permanence as soon as appropriate for them. And that's done in a number of ways, whether it be special guardianship order, adoption, long-term fostering, but also reunification. And what we've done as an organisation is really invest in our reunification pathway and train up our staff so that they feel safe and secure and deliver the same consistent message through localities when working with our families, all based on relationship and all the values that we hold true to. So I thought it would just be a timely way to highlight those as some of our positives. Another positive that I wanted to raise, but in some ways is also a negative for me, is the reduction in the number of children, or young people. And we're talking care leavers here and bed and breakfast. We've got that down to 2 young people, but in my mind, that's never going to be my aspiration for our children and young people. So we continue to work at reducing that to 0. As you can imagine, it's an incredibly challenging environment to work in, but we continue to try to get alongside our young people, alongside housing, working with multi-agency colleagues to really move our young people on from those sorts of situations, which clearly none of us feel are acceptable. I also wanted to highlight that, again, from a care leavers perspective, we've had a number of our care leavers that are staying in touch with us and have highlighted the positive relationships they have with their PAs and personal advisors, and we continue to work at strengthening that at an earlier level in terms of reaching down to our young people as a secondary allocated worker post 16, and then becoming more and more involved as they head towards 18. It's an ongoing work in progress, and there's always learning for us. Some of the negatives that I wanted to, areas to develop on were around our initial health assessments. And whilst in October we had 84.6%, and that relates to only 2 of our young people not having an IHA in timescales, purely because of ill health at the time of one of the workers, we are still seeing a real challenge in getting our young people that are placed out of area into IHAs within 20 working days. And I'm working closely with Louise Smith, who's on the call today, to really improve that. But it is something that I'm seeing on a month-on-month an issue, and leading to more and more escalations through the CCG, through Rachel Lackland, our LAC doctor, our child and care doctor, and through our safeguarding unit. So just to make you aware that that's an ongoing issue that we're trying to resolve on a child-by-child basis. The other area that I'd like to look at developing as well as and bring your attention to is our pathway plans. I saw a drop in October, and for me as the lead for children in care, I'm not comfortable with that, and there needs to be improvement moving forward. So I've spoken with my team managers, and we have a clear action plan to improve that moving into next year. So I just wanted to highlight those as the key points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I've got a number of speakers, starting with Councillor Holloway. Welcome, Councillor Holloway, and then Councillor Carol Jones, and then Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just obviously, first of all, just a quick brief note to Teresa. Just glad to see that we're putting in extra support for our social workers at this difficult time. We all understand as councillors, we all understand the immense pressure they're under at the moment, and again, I take my hat off to the amazing work that some of them do. Matthew, you have partially answered some of my question actually, First of all, it's good to see that the SDQ assessments, they have been improving. I'm glad to see that the data is going in the right direction. The dental checks as well on health, I see, has been improving. Just to clarify about the CICs, where you said about within 20 days, there is no data for July. Could you just clarify for that for me, please?
Absolutely. And from our point of view, all the consents were received in timescales, but that came down to our children trying and our efforts to get our young people into IHA appointments within 20 working days. So we've known about it for some time, and we have taken action through the CCG and through our own escalation processes. But that's the reality of it. We weren't able to have those appointments within 20 working days.
Okay, thank you. Now, I just wanted to clarify because obviously it shows no data.
Absolutely.
On the graphs at all, but okay. Thank you, Matthew.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor Holloway.
You don't have any other questions, Ryan?
No, Madam Chair, no.
Okay.
Matthew has already partially answered some of the things I was going to answer him, and yeah, and I just wanted a clarification on as to why there was no data on the CICs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carol Jones.
Thank you. I just wanted to drill down a little into the personal advisors. There are 3 personal advisors I can see. Do they have other roles, or do they purely concentrate on the care leavers? How many do they have each? Do they see them face to face, or is it all done virtually? I just wonder whether they are they reactive or proactive? I just wanted to drill down a little bit further into that, if that's possible.
Absolutely, Councillor Jones. So just in terms of the structure of the team, there's 2 team managers, and under them sits 9 FTE or full-time equivalents per, which will be the personal advisors. They do have a primary allocation once the young person turns 18, and will have more of an ongoing role as the young person heads towards 18. And we try to reach down from around 16 to 10 key meetings, and then that role develops as we move forward. I don't have the exact statistics in front of you, but they are all proactive in working with the young people. But it is young person led, so there may be times where the young person will prefer to be contacted via WhatsApp or a phone call or Skype, or meeting out in the community for a coffee. And that's done on a minimum of 8 weekly basis. So.
Sorry, so would they would see or have contact with each care leaver every 8 weeks? Is that right?
Yes.
And if there was an issue or a problem, they could bring that forward and have more meetings?
Oh, and I say that as a minimum, sorry. So
yeah, okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem.
Is that fine, Carol?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll bring Councillor Kirby in, and then I'll come to you, Sarah Jane, to pick up on those. Okay, Councillor Kirby.
Hello, thank you, Chair. You know full well that I banged on about the initial health assessments for quite a while, and to see them yet again be not particularly good is frustrating. The reason why initial health assessments are so important is that they help form part of our care plan. Without that, we could be we're unable to tailor literally our children's needs. So I cannot get over how important this is. I think, thank you, Matthew, for mentioning that it was only two young people, but you know full well that I am passionate about young people, and I want to ensure that our care is young person led. Now, the gold standard for me would be a clinician, so for them to have their health assessments in a time and a place that suits our young person, that's young person led. So whether that be at school or whether that be in their foster placement or wherever, at a choice up to them. Now, I know, Matthew, it's really great that you said that there's going to be a little bit of a workshop. We're really lucky that we've got the new Louise Smith, and I am now in a position of authority and power, being the new safeguarding portfolio holder. I think this needs a little bit more love than that. I think we'll do a proper deep dive. I want to have a look at our dental as well. I think that again, how do we ensure that our dental rates are taken up higher? Do we have to get dentists into schools? Do we have to take our get I don't know, get a dentist to a house and how that would work? Anyway, we'll explore it. We'll look at it, but it needs a proper deep dive. And I think that the amazing Louise would be fantastic with that. Louise, I think, is also going to speak. She's done an RTS. Anyway, Chair, there we go. That's it from me.
Thank you very much. Sarah Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Kirby, thank you. It's always very close to us, initial health assessments, and we'd welcome a review. And just to say, there are those processes in place. So we do have a group which is chaired by Miriam, who's here, who consider good health outcomes for our children in care. Very neatly, the IHA sit within that group, and Louise is part of that group, and Matt and several others who just give good care and attention when due. I think it's really challenging when the figures are so small, and there will be, for individual reasons, why those two didn't take place, which it wouldn't be right and proper to go into in a public meeting. But just to feel reassured, if we can offer some more information from that group to you, we're more than happy to do that. And just a question around our care leavers, if I may. PAs support on average 22 young people, which we do very well to be able to make sure that that's right. And actually, for a PA, that would be the number of young people that we would hope for them to support. Because what we know with the visiting pattern, individual work with their pathway plans, and to be responsive whenever they need us, which is exactly what our PAs do. That's the right number, and they work very much as a service and a team. So we're comfortable that is right, and that our young people get a timely response from us as well. So just wanted to offer that reassurance. And the care leaver delivery group stay close to that information as well. And we keep information going to the care leaver delivery group. And any exceptions that might occur, there aren't any, but if there were, we'd make sure that this board hears about those also. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Sarah Jane. I've got Councillor Biggs, and then I'll bring you in Louise Smith, if I may, and then we've got Councillor Holloway afterwards. So, Richard.
Thank you. Just looking at the tornado chart on page 17 on ModGov, which I think is page 7 on the page. I usually look at that very quickly because it gives a snapshot of the sort of balance. And usually it's quite easy when you look at that quickly just to think, well, actually there isn't much difference. But if you actually drill down and look at the numbers, it is actually nearly 20% higher for males, and that seems to be reflected in the schools, the virtual schools reports as well. So clearly there is a number difference there. I don't know if that's a sort of just a snapshot at 6 months and it does vary widely. I don't know. I suspect it might not be. But another point is that those numbers don't actually meet the 441. So you've got 241 boys, 194 girls, which equals 435, not 441. Did add that up about 5 times to make sure. But something's obviously slightly awry there, and that just worries me slightly when you get data and you need to rely on that data, that it needs to be absolutely right. So one thing is perhaps slightly off, but I just wanted to comment on the disparity with the boys and girls, really.
Did you want to come in on that, Matt, before I go to Louise, or Louise, did you want to comment on that?
So could I just come in first? Sorry. So thank you, Councillor Weller. So the 441 is an accurate number. Absolutely it is, and I'll take that away in terms of our report. I'm not quite sure what's happened there in terms of the split, but I'll look at that in more detail and hopefully feedback at a further board.
Thanks, Matt. Louise, did you want to come in now?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Kirby, for raising about the deep dive. Any support from you is greatly appreciated. But I did want to comment how much of improvement has been made by the joint working that we've been doing over the last few months. And unfortunately, what happens is when you see smaller numbers of children needing an IHA, it has a massive impact on the percentage. But what also has an impact is when we send our children out of county. We know it's a national issue in terms of trying to get an initial health assessment within the 20 days, but that causes an obstacle to us being able to achieve that. But really happy, and you can be assured that the escalation goes between me and my colleague designate wherever our children are placed. But also to just mention about the immunisation, the dental. So I think there's still some work on the alignment of our figures, because in terms of Dorset Healthcare and what the nurses are telling us, it's 97.4% for our children receiving dental appointments within the year. Just wanted you to be to know that from health.
Thanks very much indeed. That's quite reassuring, actually. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to go on to education and training, Matthew. You've got there, it says not the 19 to 21-year-olds, the number is 53. I just wanted to ask, do we actually have a breakdown of those 53, of those doing apprenticeships or in college or working on any sort of government sort of Kickstarter schemes? I'd just be quite grateful if we could possibly have a bit more detail into that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Is that under the, sorry, which section is that of the report? Sorry.
That is under the report of care leavers, where it says in employment, educational training for 19 to 21-year-olds, we've got 53 is the latest.
Oh, I see. Yes, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I was on the wrong page.
I just requesting could we just have a breakdown of the 53 just to see which one of those is doing apprenticeships, which those are employment, or any other sort of vocational training with the technical colleges, or involved in the Kickstarter scheme that the government obviously has been rolling out across the country.
Sure, thank you. Would it be possible to feed back at a future date? I am able to break down that data, but I don't have it to hand. I could break that down in further commentary.
We'll send a written response, Councillor Holloway, because yes, we do have that, and it is a positive story, but we'll get that detail to you.
No, that would be great, because we have talked on this board quite a bit about the care leavers going on to obviously further education, employment, and I would just like to see, how many of those are progressing on to, to further education, employment, apprenticeships. It just would be really good to see that data and just see that bit more in depth, please. Thank you.
I wonder whether, Matt, you could get that information out to us before the next meeting, as it's relevant now and it's in our minds. If you could pull out that information and get it over to all of us, and that would be helpful. Okay?
Absolutely, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. That's smashing. Thanks. I've got Lisa, and then Andrew Kirby, and then Louise again, please.
Thank you. Mine was really just to clarify around the difference between numbers of children in care and the numbers that you see in the virtual school, is because virtual school runs statutory school age and all the way through to the end of the academic year that the children turn 18, by which time obviously they have already become care leavers. We just keep them on in the virtual school to the end of that academic year. But obviously at the other end, at the beginning end, children in care start at 0 and aren't in the virtual school. So there will be differences in those numbers.
Thank you. That makes sense now you've said it. So thank you very much. Andrew Kirby. Andrew, did you want to speak? Doesn't look as though. Are you there, Andrew? No, we may have lost him momentarily, and I've got something come up on my screen that's stopping me see anything. Louise, can I invite you back in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it was just a response to the points I was making about out of area children, and mine was a response to Councillor Kirby.
Yeah, that's
Thank you, though.
That's what I thought it was. Thank you. Anybody got any other questions they want to ask Matthew on the data information? If not, we'll move on to the virtual school annual report, which again is Lisa, please. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Sorry, slow on the unmute. So you have the annual report provided to you for the virtual school, and we're really delighted that there is so much to celebrate this year. I think we've come an awful long way. I think that the Ofsted is the icing on this year's cake for us in terms of the way that they have recognised the virtual school's ambition. This is the thing you'll hear me talk about the most, because I'm proud of everything it says in there, obviously, but I'm particularly proud of the fact that it uses the phrase highly ambitious, and I hope you can see that through the report. And I think a really clear example of that is, for example, our figures for our post-16 children and young people last year who were in education or training was 66%, and that compares to the previous year that was 51%. So you can see a real uplift there, and something that we absolutely want to continue working on, so that we have more and more of our young people following on into some kind of education or training post 16. But it's the culmination of a lot of effort over a lot of years, really. So there is a lot to celebrate in there, but I hope you can also see that we don't sit on our laurels, and I've been very clear in the report about the areas that we need to continue working on. There's a lot more that we still need to and want to do, and probably one of the things that it didn't quite fit to go into the report, but that I want to make you aware of, is that now that we really have confidence that we have the basics absolutely strongly in place, and by basics I mean a real focus on the academic progress of our children, really strong PEP systems, a really good eye on our children who are struggling for various reasons in school, but what we want to do now is move into a really exciting creative phase for the development of the school. And what you're going to see over the next year is lots of creative opportunities for our young people to get involved with various projects and other things that will happen for them, so that we can really broaden their horizons even further. So that's a kind of watch this space, really. And the other thing that I particularly wanted to mention today, which again I feel doesn't necessarily spring out of a very formal report, is the fact that we have worked really hard this year to celebrate our children, and to know them as individual children and young people, and to spread the love of that celebration, not just within the virtual school, not just with our schools and our designated teachers, but with as many people in children's services as we can speak to about it. So with that in mind, I would just like to share a couple of examples with you of the ways in which we celebrate our children. So you'll see in the report that it talks about obviously our EPIC Awards, and we celebrated 93 children and young people in July last year. We celebrate in their PEP meetings, and our governing body monitoring has shown that those celebrations come through really well in our PEP meetings. We have got more work to do to make our PEPs even more person-centered than they are, and get the consistency of that, but they are absolutely being celebrated. And we celebrate them every single week. On a Monday morning, the team come together and we talk about children that they want to celebrate by awarding them with a £20 book voucher. And those celebrations can be for all sorts of different things. And what's really lovely is when it's the children that I don't already know really well, because we know which children those are. Those are the ones that have been really struggling. And so I hear a lot about them and I get involved in those children's situations. I love it when it's a child that I don't know much about, because I know those are the children who are getting on. And it's so lovely they are celebrated too. So it's not just about overcoming hurdles and barriers. We really do look at all of our children. And just to share a couple of examples, I'm going to read you some of the things that I hear about on a Monday morning, because as corporate parents, I know that you want to feel that joy in that celebration too. And you can all read the report, so I don't need to tell you all the things that are in the report, but I do want to tell you this. So Tommy has made 5 progress steps in his maths this year, which is phenomenal. Tommy's in a special school. Callum was very ambitious for himself in his PEP and presented very politely and positively. He stayed focused and asked good questions. And that was the first time that Callum had been to one of his PEP meetings. So that was really great for him. Courtney is on or above target in all subjects. She has 100% attendance, 60 achievement points and 0 behaviour points. She is a model student. Kieran is better regulated and he said, I play nicer now. He is able to sustain his concentration and regulation. Shyla ran her meeting to update her education, health and care plan and was amazing, vocalising her needs and sharing what she would need to help her in education. And you'll notice there I gave 2 examples of children who really had a strong voice in their PEP, and that is something that we want to work really strongly on, them setting their own targets, there being a really good golden thread that runs through our PEP meetings that absolutely addresses what the child or young person needs and wants for themselves. And I'll do 2 more and then I will be quiet and answer your questions. Reese came into care quite late. He's done really well at Kingston Moorwood, and a local company he's been working with has offered him a level 2 apprenticeship in metalwork linked to Yeovil College. He's very motivated. This is a real turnaround. And Cam has completed a business enterprise project, seeing it through to completion and being really engaged in it. These are the kind of examples, this level of detail that we went to with the inspector during our Ofsted inspection, and that I think went a long way to helping us to the outcome that we received, because she was really impressed with that. Okay, I shall be quiet.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Stella Jones and then Councillor Lugg, please.
Yeah, I think the work that the virtual school does is brilliant, and the way you celebrate the children, and we just heard, is really, really good. But there are 2 things I'm concerned about. One is exclusion from schools, and I know you're working on this and it has got better, and you're actually doing training with teachers as well. But the worst one, I think, is children missing out on education, and some of them missing out for a whole term. Is this because they move placements? Is it because they've been excluded and never go back? It seems wrong that the children missing out for a whole term on education. What are the prospects of you getting that down?
Thank you. And what I would say, the first thing I would say is that actually it's already an improving picture and has improved considerably over the last year in terms of the pace at which we're able to move our children back into education. I can tell you that of the children who are currently missing education, they're all missing education because they've had a placement move. And they are all children, all bar one, are children who have an education, health or care plan. And this is where we are finding ourselves in where we get stuck, really, because we are bound by statutory processes. We're also bound by working with other local authorities, not just our own, in terms of the SEND services. And so what I've asked for from across education and social care is for a group to come together to work with me on a system change piece, which is around exactly that. It's around how can we speed that statutory process up? How can we make sure that for our hardest to place in school children, that we can do that at our most effective and give those the highest priority, and how can we also make sure that we're working really closely around the placement move and making sure that there is suitable education where the placement move goes to, because sometimes there can be a bit of a mismatch around that. And I know that that's really challenging, what I'm asking for, because sometimes there are limited options in terms of placement moves, but it's also about making sure that there is suitable education wherever that is as well, particularly if we're looking for a special school. And that tends to be where it is the really most challenging end of the situation. So I think we are doing absolutely everything that we can when it comes to the individual children, because we have a fortnightly oversight of that, where we're talking about those children and moving those steps forward for them. And while we're waiting, making sure that they have appropriate provision in place, some kind of alternative provision in place. But now it's about what we can do with the system to make the system more effective. And that's what we're hoping to do as soon as possible, really. So yes, there is more work to do. You're absolutely right, but we're on it.
Yeah, that sounds great. And is there any chance of a child actually going off the system completely and you losing track, or is that nearly impossible?
I would say now it's nearly impossible.
Oh, good. That's excellent.
I daren't say fully impossible, because then I'll get caught out, won't I? But I would say now is nearly impossible.
Good.
It's very robust.
Yeah, I know in the past that's happened, so this is good news.
I don't use the word robust lightly, because I hold myself very strongly to account for that, but I think it's very robust.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's reassuring. Kathy and then Ryan, please.
Hi. It's an excellent report and you're quite rightly proud of it. My concern is the same as Stella. It's about exclusion. So I'm chair of the local alliance group in East Dorset. And one of the things that we're looking at the moment is inclusion, which of course means inclusion in education as well. And we're about to start up a working party, but I've had a report that one of the schools in my area has a much higher exclusion rate than others. If you find that, how do you work with that school to try and address that and to prevent children from being excluded?
So I think there's a few things that I'd like to say about exclusion. I think the first is to say that our numbers of exclusions aren't high, but that doesn't mean that we're happy with that. We don't want any. It is therefore a priority and continues to be a priority on the school development plan. And because by nature of our cohort, a high percentage of our cohort have SEND needs, we are therefore also seeing that a high percentage of our exclusions are of children with SEND needs, and that's not a position we want to be in. In terms of how within the virtual school we work with our schools, we absolutely put ourselves in quite a challenge space with them around exclusions. If there is an exclusion, we are in attendance following that exclusion, and there are things that we're asking the school to put in place that are about what the school are doing, not about what the child is doing. And I think that's a really important distinction. But there is no doubt that those schools, when those exclusions happen, they are dealing with incredibly challenging situations. And so it is also about making sure that we continue to work with them and that we don't just point the finger at them, I suppose. So we do work really closely with them in terms of helping them with other strategies that they can try, and how we can use our funding to support them, using our educational psychology service, our specialist teachers, our inclusion workers, really wrapping around the school just as much as we're wrapping around the individual child. And in terms of schools where we might see higher, in general, even beyond the virtual school, where we might be seeing those higher levels of exclusion, we're actually working with the locality team as a whole to really try and unpick what is happening in that locality. We've started that process in particular with one locality where we are seeing a picture around inclusion in the secondary schools in that locality, and what we can do to support around that locality, support around those schools, understand what's happening for those children in the community as much as about what's happening with them in the schools. So it's a complex thing to unpick, really, but we are working on it, absolutely.
Thank you. That's very reassuring.
Thank you. Ryan, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's actually Councillor Kathy Lurg and Councillor Sturgeon have actually kind of answered my question, as it was around exclusions, because certainly when I have meetings with head teachers in my local ward, often exclusions is something that does come up on quite a regular basis. It does about that. And Lisa, as you said, you know, often the senior teachers often tell me it's often also partly into SEN needs as well, that sort of often is related to it, unfortunately. But you know, I just wanted to just add the point that I'm glad that we are aware that this is something that we do need to improve, and this is obviously something that my local schools tell me as well, that it's something that we need to sort of focus and understand of trying to help those children, you know, getting back into education, getting back into the classrooms, and obviously making sure that our schools and teachers have got the sufficient support there. But I'm glad from your reporting and from what you said that, you know, this is something that you are aware of, and that we are sort of you know, we're looking into obviously making improvements. I appreciate it is not an easy thing to improve, but I am satisfied that we are certainly looking to improve on this. So thank you.
Thank you. And if I can just add there that the other complexity there is that really, as much as possible, we want to keep the child in that school. We want to keep them in mainstream schools if that's the right place for them. We have a number of our children who are in learning centres. I don't want to see that number continue to go up and up. I want us to be able to meet their needs within mainstream settings. And so that also has its added complexity in that we have to balance that with those mainstream settings, then not excluding them.
Absolutely, because that's often what what teachers say to me, is that they want to keep that child in mainstream school. You know, that is their absolute priority. That is, so it raises you raise a good point.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Thank you, Lisa. I've got Councillor Jones, and then I want to invite Miriam in to speak, and then Andrew Parry. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things really. Sometimes, whilst I know the hope is always to keep a child in mainstream, for some schools they just don't cope well enough with SEND children, and I just wondered as a council whether we would give our children priority to get into Coombe House if that was deemed to be perhaps a little bit more stable for them. And secondly, I wondered what your thoughts are as to why the year 10 cohort is a little bit sort of it's not doing quite as well as the other years. And I just wonder, is this something nationally, or what do you think the reasons are behind the year 10?
So the first bit around Coombe House, there's quite complex work that goes into identifying the correct cohort to make a start at Coombe House. Some of that cohort may be children in care, but not necessarily. I think it's about the children with the right needs, and then also the right mix of children has to be given consideration as well. Miriam may, when she speaks, want to add a little bit more information on that. I can tell. But that's all I could add on Coombe House particularly. And then the year 10s who are now our year 11s have been our worry year group last year. They continue to be a year group of concern for us for sure. I think that you know, often you will see more of a wobble in year 10 and then things start to pick up in year 11. So in that respect, I wouldn't be hugely surprised. It's the level of wobble that they've had that has meant that we've had a really, really close eye on that year group in particular. And if I talk about attendance as an example, where because of ongoing COVID issues and the number of young people that are now getting COVID in schools this term, we're seeing our attendance this term as a whole cohort going down from September through to the end of November. But our year 11s have gone, although they started weak at the beginning of September, they have gone up month on month. So actually, we are seeing the fruits of our labours with that year 11 group, but it doesn't mean they're off my worry list by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, no, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Miriam.
Thank you, Councillor Weller, and good evening, everybody. I wanted to add to what Lisa was saying around exclusions, and one of the things that we are really focusing on in terms of our obsessing about it is to wrap around the schools, and we've invested in a training programme called Dorset Steps, which is a therapeutic approach to applying a functional assessment of behaviour, so addressing the causes of why a young person might be presenting the way they do. We've invested in one of our trainers is from one of the special schools, and they're a trained trainer, and we're rolling it out to all our schools, and we're doing targeted work to make sure that we engage the schools where we know there is a higher need. So just picking up on what Councillor Jones was saying, that some schools find it's more of a challenge to them because of the context of the school around children who may have special educational needs, whether that's social, emotional, mental health needs, whether that's speech and language needs, whether that's autistic spectrum condition and those sort of pervasive neurodevelopmental difficulties. The approach of Dorset Steps is a relationship-based approach, and it fits very much with our emphasis on inclusion, and what part of that process is about impact. So when we're introducing that whole approach, we are asking schools to engage with this around what will be different as a result of this training. It's a whole school approach, so they are expected to embed it in their school. And what we do know is the schools that have been on this journey it's reduced their physical interventions, the number of physical interventions they're using, because they are responding to the cause of the behaviour and addressing the need. And it's also reduced the number of exclusions for children who are in those more vulnerable groups, which includes our children in care, because those schools were very aware that actually when they looked at that, did an analysis of their fixed term exclusions and permanent exclusions, it was those vulnerable children that were repeat fixed term exclusions. And that was the cause for concern. And what we also know is it's a journey for a school to go on, and it takes time to change those hearts and minds. In our bigger schools, which is where we have more of the challenge around some of the exclusions, it's a bigger system to change, and that's going to take a little bit of time to do that. But I wanted to reassure you around that we know it is an obsession of ours, it's a focus of ours to really wrap around those schools and target it and look at outcomes and work on making sure that the investment we're putting into it is making a difference. And then just in terms of Coombe House, we are working very hard with the Coombe House on identifying those children. We're doing it child by child, really looking at the context of that child. Some of those children may well be our children in care, because we would want the best for them. It is, as you know, a fantastic setting, a great opportunity to be able to use that. And so for some of our children, it'll be fantastic for them to be able to be prioritised and have their educational needs there met. We do need to make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact though on their social skills in their community, and that we're not transporting them miles away from where they live. And that's because that's really important that we do keep within our DFE timelines around transport as well, because that has a negative impact then on terms of them being able to access community events, and that's really important as they develop. We have to be forward forward planning and forward looking for those particular children. So it's really, really, you know, for me, actually, it's that SEND approach, really thinking about the needs of the individual child, keeping it personalised. But for me, actually keeping them in the mainstream is where the greatest opportunities are. And if we can keep them in mainstream, that's where actually they will have the greatest opportunities. So that's a bit of a soapbox.
That's very helpful, Miriam. Thank you very much. Can I bring in Councillor Parry, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very mindful that there used to be a sort of historical behaviour amongst new heads that when they arrived in their schools, the first thing they would do is sort of exclude 6 pupils as a matter of course to give a stamp of authority on how they were going to conduct business around the school. I would like to think that all Dorset heads now and any incoming Dorset heads know that our message and our mantra is one of inclusion. And when you look at what is the driver behind exclusions, very often, more often than not, I believe, it is listed as persistent disruptive behaviour. And I think our intervention is don't let it become persistent. If it's flagging up, let's deal with it. And that is really the root out of exclusion, because our mantra and the message I would very much like to come from colleagues on the Court Parenting Board is that we expect inclusion in our schools. We expect our children to be included. And if that requires us to work closely with the schools and provide training and support through our locality teams, then that will happen. I absolutely promise you that will happen. And I would hope that I've got the support of yourself, Madam Chairman, and other members of the board in saying that. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor Parry. I think that it almost goes without saying it should be the core function. We want all children included. So thank you very much for highlighting that. I have to make an apology here because I should have called Vic in at the start of this report, and so I'm doing so now before we move on. If there was anything that you wanted to add to anything that's been said, Vic, please. And I'm sort of assuming he's there somewhere, but I don't.
I'm not sure he has been able to join us tonight,
he's not been able to join us, no.
Okay, in that case, I still apologise for having been so remiss at the start of it, but he hasn't missed us anyway, so that's fine. I'm sure he has missed us, so that's fine. Thank you. So I'm going to pass now to Claire Shields for the children in care strategy, please, Claire.
Thanks, Councillor Weller. And it's really nice to be able to talk about how we're going to involve our children and young people and making sure that we hear their voice. Ever more important, I think, given the conversation that we were having at the start of the session today. So this is our opportunity to reflect really on how we as a board will work together with our children and young people and how we will keep children's voices at the heart of everything that we do. So I'll hand over, I think, Kay and Simon are here, or is it just Simon, to be able to present the paper?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Claire. So I'm going to give an initial presentation, and I think in terms of questions and answers, Kay's availability will be incredibly helpful to me because she's there day in and day out with the kind of operational side of these things. So members will be well aware of the importance of young people's voice and our aspiration to ensure that we are actively listening to our children in care and our care leavers. Matt's already talked about some of the work that goes on directly in terms of face-to-face. But what you have in front of you is a report in terms of how we intend to develop this going forward. Really, really important part of how we get things right is about how well we understand the children and young people that are affected by the work of this board and by the day-to-day work of social care practice. And that's why this is really, really important. What Kay and myself are proposing, and we're asking you to adopt, is that we have a balance of formal mechanisms, of ways in which we are engaging young people in our formal structures. So that's this board, but also some of the work that sits underneath this work. So we are talking about engaging care leavers in our new care leaver delivery group. We are talking about mechanisms for young people to be actively involved in the work of the harbour. we are talking about the development of a school council for the virtual school, which Lisa, I know, is ambitious to achieve. And then we're talking about our Youth Voice team working with members in terms of training and understanding young people's experiences of the care system and what that means for them, and actually hearing directly from some of our young people that have experienced the care system. And then beyond that, what we're saying is that if we're really genuinely ambitious about involving and engaging children and young people, what we really need to do is to go to them, is to recognise that we don't need the best way to hear and listen to young people is to make that as a relaxed, as a comfortable experience for them as possible, and to recognise that some of our formal mechanisms don't always support that many of our young people would find a corporate parenting board meeting, virtual or otherwise, something that they would find really difficult. And so I think it's about finding different ways to do that. So Kay is in the process of identifying a range of opportunities and setting out a calendar that people can sign up to, that members can attend to come and meet with young people in an informal way, using different tools, both virtual and workshop-based stuff in which young people are present. We're very keen to expand our whole family approach into our children in care work. So Kay is looking at whole family days with birth children and foster parents to be there so that we can engage with foster carers at the same time, recognising that if we're really serious about about children and people being in foster care, really settling, that those foster families and those birth children are a really key part of that system that really helps children to feel happy and stable and settled. So we want to sort of develop all of those things. We recognise that there's potentially a need for some kind of charter, some sort of agreement between us and them about how that works. So we'd like to bring that back. We'd like to sort of agree in principle that will happen, and for Kay to go and do that. We know that there is the sorry, I've lost my train of thought a second. We know that there is a Dorset promise that built on the Dorset Pledge. We'd like to add back into that a commitment that children in care have a stay healthy and live a healthy lifestyle. But we think that's a really good set of principles around which we can do this work, so that we kind of have got the kind of key things, the key purposes for having a children in care council, for having those mechanisms are around ensuring that our children in care and our care leavers have a safe and stable home, that they do well in education, that we keep them safe and guide them into adulthood, that we're honest, kind and reliable. And we listen to and act on what they say, and we provide them with the help to enjoy life, and that we ensure that they are aspirational. So all of those things, I don't think anyone in this room is going to disagree with, that we want to develop a mechanism to allow them to do that. We start to build those mechanisms to bring that forward. So I'd encourage everybody to kind of sign up to the recommendations in this report, and I think it's an opportunity for anybody to ask questions, and I will probably stand back and let Kay do that, but if I can assist in any way, I will do so.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Simon. That's good. I'm leaving the answer about budgeting on pizzas to the cabinet member, and inviting Councillor Stella Jones to come in now with any questions you have.
I think this is an excellent report, and I think the recommendations are very, very good. And involving youngsters and right from the beginning. And meeting on where they want to be. If a youngster wanted to meet, say, in an unusual place like a skateboard park or down by the river, would that be acceptable, or do you have limits? Because it's, sometimes a youngster feels more relaxed in such a situation than anywhere else.
I think we
go wherever and do whatever. Bring your skateboard, Councillor Jones.
That's fine. I'll do that.
I think some of it is also about being in environments in which we can kind of meaningfully learn or listen to those young people. So if initially we want to meet in a skate park and young people are comfortable with that, and that's where we want to run that session, I think that's really helpful. But I'd also suggest that we'd want to get them into some sort of environment in which we can capture their views as well. It's quite difficult to do that when they're potentially performing tricks or falling off a ramp or whatever it is that they're doing in the skate park. So we'd have to get a bit of a balance, I think.
So it'd be a little bit more formal the second time around.
Yeah, potentially. But again, I think Kay's absolutely right. I think wherever young people are, I think the team are willing to go out and do that initial engagement. And I think sometimes in the past, we've sort of written out to young people, we've sent out text messages or SMS, or we've tried different social media. And for some young people, they'll really respond to that. But sometimes actually we just need to get out and be face to face and wherever they're comfortable and have that conversation. And sometimes that's what it takes in order to persuade them to come along to something else. But the team have done activities and been to Carey Camp and outdoor, things that are fun and engaging initially to kind of get them along so that we can build that relationship. And I don't think you can overestimate the value of Kay and her team building those relationships in terms of enabling people to come forward.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and it's good that you'll meet anywhere, basically anywhere to start with.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you. I've got Lisa and then Councillor Carol Jones.
Thank you. It was just to let councillors know that our inaugural virtual school council meeting is tomorrow. After school, which we're really excited about. We've got most of the young people who are able to attend face to face, and a couple who unfortunately can't attend face to face, but we're going to do a sort of hybrid virtual bit at the end to bring them in, and there will be pizza at ours. And councillors are very welcome. It's going to be included in the calendar that Simon referenced. What we are going to do is make sure that we get the balance right between numbers of young people and numbers of adults so that they don't feel overwhelmed. So we'll allocate a space per meeting if that's okay.
Thanks very much for that. I was just going to say, I don't recall seeing an invitation to pizza, so I'm feeling quite let down, actually.
I'm so sorry. I prioritised Andrew's needs, so he had the invite.
He's huge. He's huge compared with me. I clearly need pizza. But never mind. He's.
Chairman.
Kay, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so we've got dates through to next September that we can send out in an email. So there's about 20 opportunities with the virtual school dates included in that. Some dates will need to be confirmed because there'll be half-term activities, and we've put some email addresses on the bottom, so if you want to book in, you just get in touch and we'll let you know if it's full or if you've been lucky enough to get a place. And some of those opportunities will be at the Care Leaver Forum, virtual school, or coming along to some of the whole family activities. So we really hope that that will provide you with opportunities to talk to young people, hear what they've got to say firsthand. And on that note, I just want to add that if you come to a meeting actually and there are only a couple of young people there, that doesn't mean that we don't have a wider stretch of youth voice. And I think it will be helpful for us to be able to share back with you as we go forward the different ways in which we do that. So perhaps we send out a Mentimeter or a Slido to get some views on something, and we might have 15 people take part in that, but they don't ever want to come to a Care Leaver Forum meeting. So just really want to make that point, and perhaps we'll be able to come back with those statistics as we go forward in the next year, so that you know that it's not just the people in the meeting that you see who are given their voice and that we're working with.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kay. I have to say that I think because we're all different, and our young people are all different, some of them will engage in different ways, and there will be some who want to be in a sort of a more formal setting, sitting at tables in a council office, and there will be a number, as Councillor Parry says, who will respond to sitting over a coffee or a piece of chocolate cake or whatever it is. I have spent a good deal of time saying never underestimate the value of chocolate cake. Actually, it can be a great tongue loosener, as it were, or almost like a gin and tonic. But chocolate cake, do value chocolate cake. Thank you. I hope you're noticing that we're running pretty well to time at the moment.
Councillor, can I just very briefly come in and say that just to confirm that Kay does have sufficient budget to provide any refreshment needs that are required. And should this run out, I will be making a strong business case to Teresa and Sarah Jane to say that we need more, but I suspect we'll be okay. I think the other bit that Kay made, which is really, really important, is that range of opportunities, and recognizing that different young people want to dip in and express their views in different ways is a really important part of this strategy. And to sort of reiterate your point there around, for some young people, they will want to come forward and do formal presentations, and to say it ties in very much with our wish to be ambitious. So we have care leavers currently undertaking degree level courses in social work, and we have people undertaking level 3 training in youth work and so on. And so as a care leaver, having an opportunity to come on like this is invaluable experience in terms of, you know, enabling that aspiration to go forward. So it is really important that we have both the formal and informal opportunities.
Thanks, Simon. I think that that's very well said, because for a lot of young people, the opportunity to do a presentation is really, really helpful anyway, isn't it? Because they get thrown in at the deep end later on in their life when they've never done anything of that sort, and they haven't had perhaps the degree of support that some of our children get to present their views and their ideas. To give them that opportunity is very, very important. So that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Chairman,
Yes.
before we move on, it's Kate Critchell, Democratic Services. Can I just confirm the recommendation is that you endorse those? There's quite a long list of recommendations set out at page 61. Sorry, am I stepped in on your toes?
I've got it up in front of me here, and I was just about to say,
thank you.
Our committee, are you all happy to accept and endorse the recommendations that we have at the top end of your report? And I'm seeing some nodding faces and so on, so I'm assuming that's the case. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Simon and Kay, for that. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good report. Thanks. Right, where are we? I think we're Sarah Jane.
Thank you, Chair. So I have the privilege of bringing in Louise and Matt to talk about the care leaver offer, and they're going to take you through the work that's been done, really. So this is continuously trying to keep you updated as to what's happening with our care leaver offer. Can I just bring everyone's attention just to the very end of the report? Not wanting to start the wrong way around, but the recommendations, it should read for Corporate Parenting Board rather than for CSLT. So my apologies, please read that for Corporate Parenting Board rather than CSLT, and we'll be fine. But I'll hand over to Louise and Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Do you mind if I jump in first? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Louise. Just to get us started, this is an update to our care leaver offer, and we have the full update, the full offer coming to March's board. So there'll be more detail moving forward. And as Sarah Jane said, this is very much about keeping you up to speed with the continuing development of our care leaver offer. We have some of the key points that I'd like to just bring to your attention. For example, the Rees Foundation. The Ask Jan membership, you may have heard me refer to that previously. We've had a number of our care leavers take up the offer, which covers a number of different topics. For example, accessing 24-hour counselling on a helpline through to 8 face-to-face sessions if needed. There's also other bits of specialist advice, for example, ranging from savings and finance and mortgages through to other issues around housing and general legal advice. So it's a really important part of our offer that our care leavers are able to access that. And we're one of the first local authorities, I think we were the first actually nationally to pick that up. So really positive for us in that respect. We've also managed to, and we acknowledge the importance of birthdays and festive gifts. So we've built that into our offer, and we're quite proud to say that we're now offering that on an ongoing basis. One of the bigger things that I just wanted to talk about is our co-production, and the way you see the offer in front of you and the way that you see the offer in March will be very different, because we're working with our young people, our care leavers, through case service to really get feedback on how that looks and how that's accessed by them online. So a lot of work is going on in the background to really make it and feel the way that our care leavers are telling us they want that to be. So you know, I'm hoping by March we'll have that all landed and good to go, and to be shared with the board. Another key important part of our offer is the financial incentive for our young people that are accessing voluntary work through to traineeships, apprenticeships, and we have a number of young people that will be receiving the £30 on a weekly basis as an incentive to help get them into various workplaces or spend how they see fit to benefit them in the work or the experience that they're going for. And on the 12-hour-a-week basis. The other big part of our work, and we've had discussions around the Care Leaver Covenant. We've all heard of the 5 pillars. Those are now being mapped into our Care Leaver delivery group, and we have through the organisation a number of leads on that. So again, a lot of positive work being done with that, and a number of opportunities. For example, through Care Leavers Week, we had business people attending sessions that Kay had set up for the week, and that was a really positive experience and something that we'll be repeating in next year, not necessarily in the Care Leaver Week, but in terms of opportunities and experiences our young people can access as care leavers locally within Dorset. So that's a work in progress. Obviously, we've had a very successful Care Leavers Week, and thank you to Kay for supporting that, and that's something that we'll repeat as well on an ongoing basis. Those were the key points in terms of the updates. Could I turn for questions? Pause for questions even?
I've got Councillor Holloway here at the moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, Matthew, it's really good to pleased to read this. It's very good offer. Again, it's great that we are valuing our care leavers. We're supporting them, we're helping them with training, with financial. Just one thing I just wanted to clarify on 6.7, it says anyone on the first year of apprenticeship will receive £4.15 an hour, which of course is insufficient to live on if they are living independently. It says about a top-up payment would be provided. Is that fixed, that top-up payment, or does that vary? Because it doesn't say what it is. Does it vary, or is it a fixed amount, Matthew?
Sure. Just while we have Kay on the call, Kay, are you able to answer that?
Yeah, I think that it was a fixed amount to start with, but to be honest with you, we'd want a care leaver to be successful, and if there was a shortcoming in their wage packet to enable them to take part in an apprenticeship, then we would be championing that we step
Absolutely.
in, and we would be arguing that that we meet that shortfall so that they can take part in their learning. So I think that it was worked out initially on how much the rent would be if they lived independently, what top up they might get from Universal Credit as well, and then what we may need to supplement on top of that. But like most things, it's always needs led as well.
Right. Okay. No. Thank you for that. Yeah, because obviously the last thing we want to do is discourage our care leavers from apprenticeships, because I personally, I've always been a champion of apprenticeships. They do hold the key, I think, certainly for helping further education. But so basically what you're saying is it's all based down to different needs of that individual, whether they they need extra support. And obviously you said we do actually, do we help them with the process with Universal Credit as well? Do we help them with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's PA's bread and butter. So Councillor Holloway, I'm also a leaving care person advisor as well as the youth voice manager, so that's why I can I've got 2 hats on here. And as a PA, if I had a young person that wanted to do an apprenticeship and they needed help with their rent, I would absolutely be arguing that happened.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. If you'll forgive me, all the people on the list there, I see you all, but I'm going to ask, I'm going to invite Councillor Stella Jones to come in quickly, because I know that she has to leave to go on to another meeting. So Stella, if you'd like to come in very quickly.
Yeah, I was going to talk about apprenticeships, so more or less it has been answered. But I think it's a very good report, very good the way we're going along to help all these youngsters. And I think it's it's an excellent report. It's been an excellent meeting, and sorry, I'll have to leave you now.
Okay, thanks very much, Stella. Thank you. Right, if we can come back onto our list. Kay, did you, you came in to answer a question, but you're down there to speak. So would you like to speak now? And then we've got Councillor Carol Jones and then Louise.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Matt, I was just going to say we've got those really lovely reports that are kind of replacing our report cards from some of that work we did in National Care Leavers Week that Hannah has put together, and they've got some really lovely quotes from young people and what needs to happen next. And I hope that perhaps we could send them out to members after the meeting so that they can see that sort of that other part of the voice coming through too, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Kay. Absolutely.
They're lovely, aren't they? They're really good. So.
That would be excellent, Kay. Thank you. Carol.
Thank you. It's a question, really. I think in order to live independently, they're going to need transport. Do we actually help them with driving lessons?
Kay, do you want to go again, or I can jump in?
Okay. Driving lessons is
expensive, and as a parent, we've all helped our children pass their tests.
I mean, I would like you to say that we would do that for all children and young people, and the reality is that yeah, it's very expensive. What we have made the most of is lots of charities, so the Reese Foundation and also the Capstone Trust. We've had young people be really successful with that. Friends of Dorset Care Leavers has also had a grant that they've been allocating to young people to help with driving recently, but it's not, you know, once the money's gone, that's gone. Young people also have personal budget built into their their personal budget now, so they can, which never existed before. So actually, if they want to buy some driving lessons from their personal budget, they can also do that. So it's not the answer I would like it to be, but
no, this is a call out to Andrew Parry. Come in, Andrew. Come on, how do we make this happen? Could you please budget it out? What would we be looking at? Because these young people, they will be so limited with the opportunities if they can't get anywhere.
Okay,
Andrew.
Right, so the first thing I must declare is I have a pecuniary interest in working for a motor group.
Excellent.
So
what can they do
I have
to
to
help
put
us?
that on record. But what I would say is that my own experience of acquiring a driving licence whilst I was in sixth form was that it did enable me to do areas of work after I left school, and such as driving the works van, which helped enormously with employment and my own prospects. So therefore, you would understand why I'm sympathetic to the need for young people to acquire a driving licence, because it can really help with your work opportunities going forward. But I can't be drawn on anything else in relation to my pecuniary interests at this stage.
Thank you, Andrew. Carol,
come on, we can't just leave it there, could we? I mean, how many youngsters reach sort of 17, 18? I think they can start learning to drive at 17, can't they? I mean, can we just look at the possibilities of introducing a budget for, say, 20 lessons? I mean, can we look at it?
Carol, I'd be very happy for you to look at that matter with Councillor Kirby, who perhaps could be the right route for them.
Okay, Andrew Kirby, you're with me on this. Good job.
Yep, I was going to say the very same thing myself. Thank you, Councillor Parry. Carol, it'd be really good to look at it. We've always been committed to it. Reese Foundation does some of that issue, as you all understand, because we've all been through this, haven't we? It's the insurance that's the often the break piece at the very end. Not even just getting the car, we can probably do that quite easily. Not even running the costs of the car nowadays, because you can probably do that quite easily. They're welcome to come and charge it up at County Hall. Just don't tell Matt Prosser. But actually the insurance is often the issue, and so it is a bigger commitment, and that's an ongoing commitment for them. One of the things that we want to do is to do it in young people's right time. So if it's right for some young people, let's do it, that's fine, but it won't be right for everybody. And we mustn't, it's a little bit like when we attempt to be very realistic about the accommodation young people are living in, it must be sustainable for them in the longer term. And my experience of so many young people now is that they don't want to run a car if it's a choice. So let's look at it, but let's, as I say, kind of make sure that we can. I mean, maybe we can have some, I don't know, some company firm cars as well, that we can look at that together. But I just think it's probably needs a piece of work. So if you and Councillor Kirby were able and willing to do that, that would be really welcome.
Thanks very much. Simon, you had your hand up a little while ago. Did you want to come in on this?
No, I don't think I need to. I mean, Kay kind of answered the substantive point, which is that primarily we direct people through the Rees Foundation, so that's fine.
Very much. Councillor Kathy, you wanted to speak?
Yeah. Have we thought about mopeds? You know, some sort of scheme for hiring mopeds for young people. I know other authorities have done that.
Happy to think about all of those things in the round, I think, and we've obviously got a bike scheme, a bicycle scheme that we use for staff, and I'm sure there's some opportunities for us to think about that in terms of how we might be able to access that as well. And again, so much is going to depend upon where young people are living and how much access they've got to public transport. We know it's a real challenge for us in terms of not being able to get themselves around just with the sort of public transport. So let's have a look at it. Really happy to, everything's possible.
Thanks, Teresa. I think that what we see here is that we are concerned, being largely a rural county, that transport issues are a problem, and it is something that perhaps 2 or 3 of us can get together and throw some ideas in the hat and see what comes back on that, and then we can do some research. So thanks, Carol, for bringing it up, because it is important, and it is something that all of us with children have faced at some point or other, haven't we? So we are aware of it. Louise, way back there, you had your hand up.
Way back then. Yes, no, I was just going to add in that, really happy to look at all of these things through the Care Leaver Delivery Group that we have, really well chaired by Councillor Kirby, and really making use of the opportunity to bring the action plans that have been developed through New Belongings, but also through the Care Leaver Covenant, and combining those into one action plan, really keeping us on target and keeping us focused too. So one of the things that we heard in our Care Leavers week was around how our young people want to have opportunities to really showcase their expertise, their skills, their talents. And so we're starting to plan a business event, well, many business events actually taking place in localities where our young people are, so that, if we have a talented photographer, well, then we have an exhibition alongside perhaps a talented baker or a talented dancer, but all of those sort of businesses that surround those talents are then invited to come and see those, and have conversations with our young people about where the potential is to take those further, whether that's through employment, mentoring, apprenticeships, etc. So I think that's something that that we're quite looking forward to doing in the new year.
Thank you very much. Can I just say that I think that the is it Ask Jane or Ask Jan membership?
Jan.
I think that sounds excellent, and I'm very, very much in favour of us being part of that initiative. And overall, the report is excellent. Thank you. I'm scrolling down very quickly now to the recommendations, which I can't find. Has everybody seen those? For the board to support, and for the board to support the development of the charter. Is everybody happy with those? I'm going to assume you are, and that you've had lots of opportunity. Are there any other questions anybody has for Matt or Louise, or indeed for Kay on that? Are you all happy? Good, thank you. Moving on, we have Louise again on the harbour feedback and outcomes report. Louise.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Weller. So this is the report that we wrote concluding around September time earlier this year. and is really describing and capturing the work that we've been undertaking in the harbour, and pulling this together in terms of so that we can really understand the impact and the outcomes that we're seeing through the delivery. So the harbour team has grown steadily. In fact, quite incrementally recently. We're being really successful in our recruitment of our youth practitioners and our senior youth practitioners, and really benefiting from that consistent and committed leadership under the guise of Paula Bates as our responsible individual. Work has been undertaken to ensure that the right people are in the right roles, and within a relatively short period of time, it's possible to see that, and I hope you see this in the report, that progress is really being made towards those intended outcomes that we planned that we would see in developing the harbour. So in total, we have worked with around 55 young people who've been supported between December and August 2021, the majority of which have been supported by outreach, and 3 young people in the care of the harbour, either through our residential home or through foster care. And of course, the duration and the intensity of that support has really varied according to the needs of young people, and ensuring that we have the flexibility within how we organise ourselves so that we can, through a 24/7 rota pattern, we're able to meet young people where they are, and also have that flexibility where, whether it's sort of a Sunday evening or a Monday morning, that's where our young people need us at that time. So in understanding some of the impact that we are seeing, we have used a unit cost database, which is a document that is produced nationally that kind of gives us benchmarks in terms of what things costs. But what we can see in summary is that in terms of placement and stability, we have seen a decrease in the number of young people aged 13 plus entering our care, and also a decrease in the number of children aged 13 plus becoming subject to a new child protection plan, which is where we would want to be seeing ourselves going. And also a reduction in the number of children with 3+ placement moves. We've heard this evening the importance of having that stability, because as our children move placement, then that has such wide implications on a range of other things, such as education. And so within that permanence and stability, we can see that actually we would suggest that there's a cost avoidance of pushing up against nearly £2 million for 2021-2022. And also the education of our young people. So 100% of our young people who are in full-time education, receiving services from the harbour, have remained in that full-time education. So we've wrapped around supported young people to remain in that place. 80% of young people not in education, employment or training had a confirmed place in September and are attending. And also we saw a 100% reduction in fixed term exclusion. And looking at that in terms of fiscal and economic cost avoidance of around £40,000. And then thinking about risk, we've seen again a reduction in the individual young people, in the number of arrests and also charges. And for our police colleagues, excuse me, we would probably put that at around 6,000 cost avoidance in reducing incidents of crime. And looking at our missing graphs within the report, with the easement of COVID, we saw an increase in the number of missing episodes for all children and children in care around that July time. Whereas for those children who were receiving a service from the harbour, we didn't see that same increase. And within the report, you'll see that there is a graph in blue showing missing incidents for a particular young person who we began to care for at the end of June this year. And just for that young person alone, the reduction in missing incidents saw a cost avoidance of over £17,000 in one month. And in relation to health and emotional well-being, a reduction in A&E attendance, and also around a £32,000 cost avoided in the use of ambulance, A&E and inpatients as well. and overall a decrease in substance use, although in July we saw and August we saw a slight increase noted. And I think, you know, we would probably see that in association with the easement of COVID. And I think one thing that, you know, we talked about SDQs earlier in the board meeting, and we really do want to start strengthening the use of our SDQs so that we have greater confidence in really understanding the levels of emotional difficulty that our young people may be experiencing. So what I would propose is that actually, you know, in this short period of time, we can see a significant impact of the harbour. And that's really made possible through the partnership that we have with our embedded police roles, working alongside our targeted youth workers, and also, you know, the roles that we have in the harbour. We are actively recruiting for our registered manager post and also for our psychologists and speech and language. And I think I've received notification today that we have a strong field for our psychology or our psychologist adverts interviews, sorry, which we're looking to hold in the coming weeks. So we're delighted to have those, and it will be a real great asset for us to have those embedded you know, roles within the team too. If there are any questions, really delighted to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. I haven't got any RTS at the moment, but I'm sure the minute I say that, they will all come flooding in. In the meantime, can I say I'm hugely heartened by the report and the work that's been achieved by the harbour project as a whole, and I'm absolutely convinced, harking back to what we were discussing right at the beginning of this meeting, I'm convinced that the harbour project, with this partnership working, is the very best way to get the different agencies talking to each other in a timely fashion and highlighting the potential problems that are there. It can only be good for all of our young people, both those in care, those at risk of coming into care, and those for whom we have no idea they're at risk. But this partnership working is going to throw up those bits of knowledge. And I think I've said before, back in the dark ages, when I was working actually in Surrey, my best information came over lunchtime, sharing the staff room with other health professionals. And just putting two and two together and making four in a way that you just don't get the opportunity to otherwise. So well done. I've got Councillor Jones wanting to speak.
Yeah, sorry, it's just a question really. I'm sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with the harbour project. Are you working at capacity or do you have a wait list at all? I just wondered how that works. And with your independent living units, are they fully are they full, or do you have vacancies, or how do you work those? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of capacity, you know, I would say that at the moment our focus has been on outreach. So we have had one children's home in the east of the county. And we're delighted to say that that young person has taken her first step towards independence and has really confidently and successfully moved into supported accommodation away from that residential provision as she goes towards being 18. And so really our focus now is on the opening of our residential homes in Dorchester Road in Weymouth. And we are, you know, very much looking forward to that, because I think once we have established ourselves in that residential space, then we will see ever more the impact of the harbour. So being able to provide further support to our families, possibly through you know, supporting their children to be cared for by us for a very short period of time, so that we can work intensively, so that young people can return in a more sustainable and long-term way. and then also having our 5-bedroomed home, which will be able to provide short to medium term accommodation for residential accommodation for our children, and having our foster carers, our harbour foster carers, who are really leaning in, building relationships with young people, having conversations about, actually, we get on, why don't you come and live with me, so that we're really fulfilling that value base that we have, in that no child is unfosterable. So I think once we move into our residential space wholeheartedly, we will see even greater impact than we're seeing at the moment. But also alongside that, we will absolutely be continuing with the outreach that we're delivering already. And I think with the team, we would probably see us working with around 35 young people at a time, per month. Some of those young people will go on to the next month. Some will be very short-term interventions, some as long as they need us. And I think that's one of the things about the harbour, that we don't want to see any cliff edges. So actually, we will continue with that young person even beyond 18, supporting with tenancies, etc., so that there is that continuity. But we're not intending to have waiting lists. Absolutely not. We're a responsive service, and we have that flexibility within the team, so that we can provide a real intensive intervention for our young people to really have those outcomes.
Okay, thank you. Is that all over Dorset, or do you just cover a smaller area within Dorset?
Yes, so we are providing the harbour service to to all of our children in Dorset. Our residential, focus of residential at the moment, in terms of the harbour, will be our 3-bedroomed and 5-bedroomed accommodation in Dorset, and also a accommodation in Portland as well, a little terraced house there. But looking at across the piece, really optimising our residential potential across Dorset as well, for the needs of all of our children.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Louise. Can you add something?
Thank you, Chair. I'd really just like the opportunity to share with you all that one of our care leavers has been offered a position as a youth work practitioner to work at the Harbour Project. Teresa, I don't know if you remember, I sent you a piece of her work quite a few months ago. And so pending the next stage of recruitment, they have a successful offer, which is fantastic.
That's excellent news. We're asked to note the recommendations. I think we have all done that, haven't we? And congratulations on the way that this is going forward. I'm looking forward very much to watching the whole project grow, as I'm absolutely sure it will. I'm quite convinced it can only be good. So thank you all very much indeed. No other questions there? According to my notes, we're at the end of the meeting, and I'd like it noted it's 18:51 by my laptop, which not only have all of you improved, so have I.
We knew we'd get there, Councillor Weller.
Confirm details of deadlines and next meetings and so on. Matt, that's over to you.
Thank you. Just really quickly then, Councillor Wheeler, our next formal meeting is on the 10th of March 2022.
By which time we all hope we'll all have been jabbed and boosted, and we will have beaten any new variant that thinks it can throw itself at us. And it will be lovely to be able to see you all. Thank you all very much indeed. I think we've done this in time for everybody to get off to their next meetings. So that's terrific. Thanks very much indeed, and thank you all again.